Welcome to SkwidVids. My name is Robert, and today on my 2021 Aprilia RS 660, I'm installing a set of Woodcraft clip-ons and a top triple clamp. The OEM clip-ons are pretty good. They're fairly comfortable for street, good enough for track. The problem I ran into when I test rode one at the track was I found the clip-on position to be a little too high for my liking, meaning my chin was a little too close to the handlebar when I was in a full tuck position. So in order to replace the clip-ons, you have to replace the top triple. And I'll show you guys how to do that. As far as difficulty is concerned, I wouldn't say this is the most difficult modification I've ever made to a motorcycle, or maybe the most difficult modification you'll ever make, but I will say it's a little more time consuming than you might think, and it mostly has to do with clearance. I kept running into clearance issues with my cables getting caught on the LCD display and what is that called? The air duct. It kept getting hung up on the air duct. So in addition to that, I also had some clearance issues with the master cylinder reservoir hitting this piece of the fairing here. And I think it's because these aftermarket fairings might have a more aggressive tilt backwards than the OEM. So you may not have to modify anything. You might be able to run your OEM master cylinder and your OEM reservoir mount. I had to go with a different option, and I'll show you guys what I did at the end of this video. All right, so as you can see, I removed the upper fairing, and you don't have to do that, but it's just gonna make life easier because you don't wanna have to work in such a small space. It's annoying and frustrating, and that's how things get scratched and broken. So you'll have to remove your controls, or at the very least loosen them like I'm doing here. That'd be loosening your master cylinder, loosening your controls, your switches, your throttle, and removing your bar ends. For that, you're gonna need Allen wrenches, you're gonna need Torx bits, 8mm socket, and some sort of wrench to hold on to the end of the handlebar. I used a adjustable wrench, but whatever fits that end of the bar. The bolt that holds on the handlebar has a lot of Loctite on it, so that's probably the hardest part about this whole thing, is removing that. After you've broken that free and you've loosened up all of your controls, you should be able to slide the handlebar out of the tube. What you're going to want to do next is find a way to secure your master cylinder so it doesn't tip over and you don't get air inside of your brake lines. I just used a Velcro strap and I didn't do a good enough job because I still ended up with air in the brake lines, but that's an easy fix. And so you repeat the same process on the other side. You're going to need to loosen up all the controls, loosen up your switches. As I mentioned, in order to replace the clip-ons, I have to replace the top triple, and you're going to have to loosen up the pinch bolts. There's one on each side. In order to remove the top triple nut, you'll need a 24mm socket and a whole bunch of leverage, because I think it's torqued down to 100 Newton meters. Once the clamp is off, there's another bolt on the underside of the clamp that holds your clutch cable in place. The new top triple came with all of the hardware that you'll need, which is really only 2 pinch bolts. You're going to reuse your OEM top triple nut, stem nut, whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about, the 24mm one. You're going to reuse that and the washer that came off of it. I'm using a soft mallet just to tap it into place. You could use a rubber mallet. I think that's called a dead blow. It has sand inside of it or something. Just whatever you have that's not too hard, that's going to damage your triple. Just tap it into place. Doesn't take a whole bunch of force. Okay, the top triple is in place, and now I'm going to torque it back to 100 Newton meters. Then you're going to tighten up your pinch bolts. On the Woodcraft, the handlebar clamps are labeled left and right, so just make sure that you're putting the correct one on the correct side. And the part that your actual handlebar goes through is also labeled left and right, so you can't mess that up. Thanks, Woodcraft. The kit will come with all the hardware that you need. It's not that complicated. There's bolts of different sizes, and you'll see where they go, so it's kind of intuitive. Slide the handlebar back through all the controls, the switches, and then mount it up onto the clamp, and finger tight for now until we sort out our clearance. Make sure that we have enough. Here we are zoomed in. I was gonna try to save this grip for some reason, but then I realized I'm never gonna use it again, so I just went ahead and cut it off with a razor. But just be sure, if you do the same, not to cut too deep so that way you don't cut into your throttle tube. With whatever grips you choose to replace your OEM ones with, you'll see that they have two different sizes on them. When you look at them, you'll see one is bigger than the other. The opening is bigger than the other, rather. And the bigger of the two is the one that's gonna go over your throttle tube. Here I'm using the old hairspray trick because this helps you slide the new grip into position, and it also kind of locks it into place once it dries so your grip doesn't spin. Problem is you have to work really quickly, otherwise it's going to be nearly impossible to put the new grip on. Thank baby Jesus, I have a air compressor, so I use the old air compressor trick. If you haven't seen this, you're just blowing air in between the throttle tube and the grip, and I'm just working it around in a circle, and then it'll slide into place. If you don't have one, good luck. Okay, onto the left side, and as I mentioned, each clamp is labeled left and right, and it's a two-piece setup. Per the instructions, these are the only bolts that actually require Loctite. So you're going to need some Loctite on these. I think they're 8mm countersunk bolts. And just like we did with the other side, we're going to slide the controls on first and then slide it through the handlebar clamp. Here's an overhead shot so you can see what clearances I'm checking for. I'm turning the bar full lock on both sides to make sure that my controls are clearing the display and also my fairings. And this is why you want to do everything hand tight at first, so that way you can make adjustments as you go along. In reference to the clearance issues I was talking about earlier, the big issue was on the OEM master cylinder reservoir mount. There wasn't enough space between this fairing and the reservoir, so what would happen is it would clip it as I would try to go to full lock or anywhere near it. It kept running into it. I think part of the issue is because I have to run this master cylinder in this location. It's a little further back than OEM location because I have to run this lever guard for racing. And this lever is really long, so I had to push this whole thing forward, and I think that's where some of the issue was running into. And I think this aftermarket fairing kind of tilts back a little bit further than the OEM. It has a slightly different angle. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a more aggressive tilt backward. So the way I resolved that is I picked up a Ladybird style mount from Robham Engineering. Gotta be honest, never seen one, never used one, but it seemed like it was gonna be pretty versatile and I could bend it and flex it however I needed to, and that's exactly what I did here. So I bent it into the shape I needed, and I cut a piece of Tygon tubing, and I had to extend this because it was too short. The OEM length was quite a bit too short, so I had to extend this, and it seems like it's pretty much resolved the issue. I think the only issue I might have is this thing might bounce a whole bunch because it's not terribly sturdy, but I guess it's not too much of an issue at this point. Okay guys, that's it for the video. Hopefully some of you found this useful. If so, please let me know in the comments, or at the very least, give the video a like. It helps a lot. It's kind of a lot more work recording this stuff than I thought it would be, so even a thumbs up lets me know that I'm doing something right. And if you want to see any more videos like this or anything specific regarding the 660 or just general maintenance, let me know. Thanks.